Welcome to the show. My name is Claire Lee, and I'll be your host for this episode. This week, I got to remotely sit down with Dr. Johnessee and talk a little bit more about the therapy dogs that we mentioned in the previous episode. We learned a little bit more about the differences between service and therapy dogs, along with the backgrounds of each and every dog at our school, and how they've been helping our students and staff stay mentally healthy during this year. So get ready, because this is Lambert in real time. Hello, Lambert Longhorns. My name is Claire Lee, and I'll be your host for this episode. First off, welcome back from the fall break. I hope you enjoyed your time off. I know I certainly have. To get us rolling for October, I have invited one of our incredibly passionate assistant principals, Dr. Johnessee. Hey, how are you today?
Hi, Claire. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, welcome to the show. I'm really looking forward to continuing this conversation about our exceptional students program and the therapy dogs. If you guys haven't listened to the previous episode with Miss Nicoletti, this is part 2 of the conversation where we're going to go in depth about our therapy dogs. I highly recommend you go listen to the episode before this one. So, Dr. Johnessee, I'm sure that the journey to becoming an assistant principal isn't very short. What influenced you to pursue education and eventually hold this role today?
My mom was a high school counselor, and she told me when I went to college, don't become a teacher. And so I listened to her. I got a degree in speech communication and had my first job. And I was like, I really think I want to be a teacher. I ended up going back to school because my decisions about what I want to do with my life have changed. I actually ended up in education, and my mom said, I don't know why you didn't just become a teacher in the beginning. And I was like, I do. You told me not to. Anyway, I started out actually, Dr. Davison hired me at Settlesbridge Elementary School as a kindergarten paraprofessional back in 2004. I was in elementary school for 7 years, and then I came to Lambert as an English teacher in 2011. I loved the English department. I loved my colleagues. And then I had an assistant principal who really inspired me. I just really thought that what she did for students and for teachers really kind of struck me as something that I wanted to do too. I asked Dr. Davison, how do I become an assistant principal? And he said, well, you're going to have to go back to school and get another degree. So I did. And in that process, I was grateful to become an assistant administrator here at Lambert High School. I worked on a variety of things, including working with our student support team. And then in 2017, I became an assistant principal. And that is the short version of a very long story.
Well, I'm glad it brought you to the path to being our assistant principal. There are a lot of wonderful assistant principals at our school, but what is your specific role in this position? Could you tell us a little bit about some of the passion projects you're able to work on with this job?
My actual title is the Assistant Principal of Instruction and Curriculum. The department that I support is our Special Education Department, which is the home of our exceptional students. Going to work every day, you really have to find something to feel connected to. And so for me, it's really been student support. I live in the counseling office. That's where my office is. And so I'm around counselors and working with students. And so a lot of times I have experiences with students who are going through crises and living through some pretty hard times. Also, I know from being a teacher here and also working in the school for so long that our students are under a lot of stress. So for me, I just want school to be a place where kids feel comfortable and confident. I want them to feel that there's somewhere they can go or someone they can speak with that can help them. Getting to know our students and working with our counseling office, that's really kind of been my passion. And so that kind of led me to a couple of variety of projects that I've taken on, but most recently, the therapy dogs.
So, who are the dogs? We all know about Duck, but tell us more about the newest additions to our Longhorn family.
We are obviously very proud of Duck and the work he does with his mom, Miss Nicoletti. And he really set a great precedent. I would have to say our second dog that really was a part of the conversation would be Miss Parker's dog, Charlie, a charcoal colored lab, and she stays in Miss Parker's classroom. Our next addition would be Clover. Clover is an English cream retriever. Clover was actually an owner surrender, a dog that was returned to Mr. Scott Rucker as a part of him taking on Clover. It happened to be really great timing that we were going to need another dog for our exceptional students classrooms. Clover was the second dog that was donated to us from Scott Rucker. And then finally, Maggie is our newest dog. She is a Labradoodle. She joined us the Friday before Labor Day weekend, mostly because I had actually was looking for a personal dog as well through working with Scott and training my own dogs. I reached out to him first and said, "Hey, our family would be happy to provide a home for a dog if you have one." And he said, "Here's Maggie. She needs a home." And so we adopted her about a month ago.
I cannot believe we already have 4 dogs in our Lambert Longhorn family. I'm so excited for everyone to meet them soon. Along with the topic of therapy dogs, there's usually a conversation on service dogs. So, what are the major differences in their training and work?
I am so glad you brought this up, Claire, because it's a really important conversation. The language of therapy dog and service dogs is really led by the American Kennel Club, or the AKC. They have very specific designations in terms of protected classes of animals, if you believe it or not. So, a therapy dog, like the 4 dogs we're discussing, we consider them staff members, but they are not given free access to public places. A therapy dog, or a dog that has good manners, is not given the same freedom of access to airports, restaurants, all those kinds of things. They're not service dogs. As wonderful as we think they are here on campus, their level of training is more generic about just being a good dog, those kinds of things. Now, a service dog, and I'm glad you brought this up because we have a student who has a service animal who will be here on campus. A service animal is trained to perform a specific function, and that can be a wide variety of things. We know about dogs that have special sniffing powers. And if you've watched any of the John Wick movies, you know about dogs that have been trained for protection and defense. But a service animal actually might have a closer bond with their handler or the person that they're assigned to a point where they can actually sense early signs of distress, which could be for an anxiety service, or a dog that might actually be able to determine if someone is about to have a spike or a decline in their blood sugar. And then there are dogs who do mobility. I mean, dogs are pretty amazing. There are lots of things, and I could go on and on. But a service dog has a special job that they do just for their handler. The difference is that therapy dogs are for everyone. They're here for everybody to be able to pet them and snuggle with them and take their pictures with them. We love all of that. But a service dog is not the same. And so before asking about coming up to a dog, our kids are so respectful, but we don't want to distract a service dog from the job that they're doing. We all work really hard to make sure that we say to kids, "Hey, you can come and pet her when we see someone who's interested in, like, they're looking at the dog or they want to come over. Yeah, you're welcome to." But if someone says to you, "Hey, not right now," then that's also important to be, respectful of those boundaries.
I definitely think it's important for our listeners and anyone else out there to learn a little bit more about therapy dogs and service dogs. We can always spend a little time learning about our community and making sure to know what's best for it. With such a big crew already forming, what was the inspiration behind getting therapy dogs here at Lambert?
We had a staff member who was here about 6 years ago, and her mom was really involved in a local organization called Canine Assistance. And what they do is they actually train animals for service. The very first thing for a puppy is that it learns to like people. In that time for Canine Assistance, those dogs need places to visit. And we actually partnered with that organization because a class change is a pretty sensorily overloading kind of experience for even human people who are the normal size of the people in the hallways. But for a puppy, that is a whole bunch of smells and sounds. And it's a really great experience for the dogs to kind of be socialized. So we actually tried to survey students when they were coming in to see the animals. The average level of stress by students who were coming to see the puppies was a 7. And when they left, we had them redo that survey and it dropped to a 4. Puppies aren't the thing that make everybody feel better, but for the kids who are experiencing it, we thought, hey, we found something that's working for our students. How can we be more specific in offering these opportunities and working with a couple of local organizations like Humane Hearts? Humane Hearts is a local therapy dog organization that has volunteers and they come on campus and bring their dogs. Like last year, we had Dudley. And he would come during lunch and learn, and he would be down here on the main hallway. And he had on a blue vest that said Humane Hearts Therapy Dog. So, anyway, it started to kind of go that direction that we were getting positive feedback from having the dogs. Miss Nicoletti actually was the first person to say, I would be willing to go through the process of getting trained as a therapy dog handler. I do hope your listeners will go back and listen to that episode for her. But in addition, when Duck was here and Miss Nicoletti's class would go into the community, she was so gracious. And since I was going through training, she allowed me to be Duck's handler at home. So he would stay here when they would go off campus for field trips. And I'll be perfectly candid, we had several students who, over the course of the Thursdays that I would have him, would have, like I mentioned, those personal crises. We saw that he would go in with them and like lay on the floor and they would sit there and pet him and that they would feel better. And so the next question was, how do we get more dogs? Then, with the transition after being home for so long, we really saw a unique opportunity this year to make sure we had as many animals available to our students. And that led to a lot of conversations about how are we going to do this safely and appropriately. But we just knew that with the amount of stress, making the decision to come back on campus, and the stress that comes from a regular academic start, we just really want to make sure we had a lot of support for our kids this year.
It's really great to hear that the main topic surrounding these therapy dogs is our student and staff mental health. I really am an advocate for making sure that mental health is as important as physical health, and I'm so excited to hear about all the changes and benefits these dogs are able to bring this year in the second part of the podcast. We're going to take a short break, and we'll be right back. Welcome to the break, and I want to tell you a little bit more about why I decided to do this two-part series. When I was talking to Miss Nicoletti, she was really passionate about getting the dogs involved in her classroom and mentioned Dr. Johnessee. And through her, I really wanted to express how grateful I am to have these dogs at her school with her hard advocacy to get them there. So I hope you guys learned a little bit more about the Exceptional Students program along with therapy dogs, because they definitely deserve a spotlight. Also, I want to let you know that I'm starting a new mini-series that you could be a part of. I want to have an episode out on every single grade level at our school and how it's been so far throughout this year. So if you're interested in being this podcast, make sure to go check out our Instagram, and the link is in our bio to fill out a Google form to let us know that you're interested. Thanks for listening, and let's go back to the episode. Welcome back to the episode. We'll continue the conversation on our adjustments to changes this year and how our therapy dogs have helped us feel a little bit more comfort at school. The major push to get dogs here at Lambert was for student and staff mental health, along with creating a positive environment. I'm betting now those skills are coming in more handy than ever. With physical limitations or social interactions, many students are feeling a little lonely. So, Dr. Johnessee, how do you think the therapy dogs are helping out with this entire new experience?
I think that there have been a lot of challenges we didn't really anticipate, especially with the loss of facial features, right? We don't get to see people smiling, or you walk past someone in the hallway and normally you would smile at them just so that they would feel connected. Those things that weren't really written out about what it's like to come back to school in a pandemic, I think those things are the things that students were realized first. The dogs aren't wearing masks. They have facial features. You can tell that the dogs are excited to see you. And I think it makes a difference for kids, and the dogs are all in for smiling. So I think that's one thing that's really made a difference. We were hearing from kids, hey, I really go through my day and I realize how much of an effort I make to not touch anyone or anything. And that starts to take a toll on feeling very isolated, even though you're here. So I think one of the best stories I have is that one of our staff members was actually talking to Miss Nicoletti, and Miss Parker happened to be there. I have a kid in my class who said he really doesn't get to see anybody, and I think he would benefit from having the dog. And so they made a plan to go to that student's classroom, and all the kids had a chance to interact with the dogs on their mask break. The stories that come out like that, where people just are willing to do whatever they can to help work with our kids, is why being at Lambert is the best thing ever. But I have to say that that particular day, I felt really proud that we had that resource available, because I think that it really became personal in that kid's journey, and we just really wanted to make a difference for them.
It's really cool to hear a real life experience on how the dogs have been helping at her school currently right now. But along with this conversation of petting the dogs, Miss Nicoletti had mentioned to me about keeping hand sanitizer nearby so anyone who wants to interact with one of the dogs can take precautions. With the dogs going in and out of these classrooms, what are some of the measures taken to limit the spread? Is it safe for dogs to go around and be pet?
We actually had a really long conversation with some of our local resources and community members, especially veterinarians, about not only the safety for students, but also the safety for our dogs. Because we obviously, at the very beginning of the pandemic, there were a lot of questions about transmission. We were able to monitor some of that information over the course of the summer, and we had confirmation from the veterinarian communities, all of our personal vets, we had them weigh in, and we had some conversations with district office just to make sure we were, are we aligned? Is this going to be okay? Based off of that feedback, it's proximity. So you don't want a crowd of people around the dogs. Same reasons that you don't want a crowd for anything. You may not see the dogs out as much during your class changes. You may see them more in between classes versus how we would try and be out, because we don't want to draw a crowd of kids at the same time. And then the hand sanitizer is huge. We consistently talk to kids about washing their hands. So even after you come up to see a dog, we always like, hey, make sure you wash your hands, or do you have hand sanitizer, or those kinds of things. We do hope our kids will take a moment and think, okay, I just touched a dog, I need to wash my hands. And then finally, the mask wearing. Our kids, I have been so impressed. Our kids really have been committed to the mask wearing. Those three things together are the ways that we wanted to try and ensure safe interaction for the students and the animals here on campus.
Even with limited research, I'm glad you guys are taking extra precautions to keep everyone safe, including the dogs. So with the limited access on basically everything right now, if a student needs a dog or needs a time to take a break, where can they have that opportunity?
We have a couple of things that we're trying to offer to our staff members so that we can help set up more access opportunities for students. And that might be more visits to classrooms, which would be a great way for us to come to you guys as well. Maggie, who is our newest baby, she is in the counseling office, and she's here for that reason, that if a student is in crisis, she's really here for that. As often as possible, we'll be with Dr. Davison kind of in the morning by the tea area. I think that that's such an important thing too, just like seeing the dog seems to make some kids smile too. So the other thing I'd say is that as we start looking at ideas, I would love for students, if they have ideas of things that they would like to see with the dogs, or ways that they would like for us to help make sure that they have the ability to access them, I'd love it if they would share that with me, and they can email me. My email is on the school website. Click that link and send me an email and give me some ideas, because it's a new program. Sharing those ideas from kids would be huge as well.
So if any of you guys are interested in giving your input on what they should do about getting access throughout the school, make sure to let Dr. Johnessee know. So I think that's all for now. Thank you so much, Dr. Johnessee, for coming on the show today. I feel like the listeners and I were able to learn not just more about the dogs, but how therapy dogs really make a difference in any environment. If anyone's interested in learning more about Lambert's dogs or therapy dogs in general, where can they find that information?
The first thing I would direct you to is the American Kennel Club's website, and you could just put in AKC Therapy Dogs. They have great information on there, and they can explain to you the same thing that I discussed, and they can give you some resources. So we have a local organization called Humane Hearts here in Forsyth County. Then they partner to make sure that they work on therapy dog visits. And so those are the two major places that I would say you could find out some information. The other thing I would say is that Lambert, we are working so hard with Mr. Walker and his work in our wellness collaborative. What we're trying to do now is to add a page to the Lambert High School webpage where it will give you information on our therapy dogs, introducing our dogs, giving you insight on where you can find them, linking to their social media, because our dogs have their own Instagram accounts as well. And then also kind of giving a chance for some students to maybe help us design what our next steps will be over the next few years. Now that we have a pretty robust program, we're going to be looking for our kids to help guide us on what's the next step and what do they want to see, because that's what they're here for. They're here to help serve you guys.
So please make sure to check out those resources and give yourself a chance to learn a little bit more about therapy dogs. Again, I am so grateful that you were able to come on the show today and have this conversation with me.
Thanks for having me. This is awesome, and I'm so excited for the work you're doing and getting the news about Lambert High School out to our community. What an awesome podcast. Thanks for having me.
Oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate everything that you have told us and taught us. If anyone is interested in listening to more episodes of this podcast, you can check out Lambert in Real Time on Spotify, YouTube, and basically anywhere podcasts can be found. If you guys are interested in keeping up with us on Instagram, you can find us at LHS Real Time, and while you're there, fill out a form. Thank you so much for listening. Stay safe and hook 'em.